Hey, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be installing these Mustang Roush vents on a 2002 BMW M3. Now these vents can be installed on pretty much any vehicle. We'll have to make a couple modifications to them. There's a lower section here. You can see there's 4 screws and the rest of it is 3M taped on. So we're going to remove those 4 screws. We're going to pop this lower section off of the glued pieces here on these tabs. We're going to add our own 3M tape. We're going to cut a hole in the hood, and we're going to have Mustang vents on a BMW M3.
Before we start work on the M3, I wanted to give you guys an idea of what the vents look like installed. I've already installed these same Roush vents on my Focus RS. Now the vents themselves are pretty versatile. You can install them on almost any hood with just a slight bit of modification. And if we look underneath here, this is going to be the size hole we're going to be cutting out. Now it's fairly large, don't be intimidated, it's really not that bad. Now we will be making a template, so you can see I got a template here that I made. Now that's going to allow just the outside edge to peek out and a nice good chunk on the front end here, because we're going to have a lot of wind speed, so we want to make sure that front end is nice and stuck on there so we don't have to worry about the wind peeling it back. So if we take this off, you can see that that template starts right on the outside of these louvers. We want to try to get that hole as small as possible, just enough so these louvers can pop through, because you can see we don't have very much room to work with on this outside edge, so we want to try to get that hole as precise as possible. Now, if we look here, this is 3M Primer 94. Now this is tape adhesion promoter. This is a must. You're definitely going to want to use this stuff. Now what this does, it creates an extremely strong bond between the 3M tape and the surface you're applying the tape to. So you're going to get a brush, we're going to take this, we're going to brush it on wherever we're applying that tape, then we're going to stick the tape on. We're going to use that on the vents, and we're also going to use it on the hood. Like I said, anywhere that this tape is going to be attached to. Now when it comes to the tape, we want to use as strong a tape as you can find. This here is 65 pound hold strength. That's what I used for these here. I've had 0 issues. The car has seen high speeds, it's seen a track day. I've had 0 issues with them peeling back, moving, nothing. These things are on there solid. So definitely I would go 65 pound hold strength. You could probably go a little bit lighter, but definitely try to go as strong as you can. It doesn't hurt to have a stronger bond. So like I said, definitely pick this stuff up. Primer 94. You're going to want to use this 65 pound hold strength tape. Probably go a little bit lighter, but as strong as you can find. Now when it comes to cutting the holes, so you've really got 2 options when cutting these holes. You've got a Dremel or you've got an angle grinder. Now with the Dremel is my preferred method, just because it's a little smaller, it's a little more precise. You can adjust the speed, so you're not going to have to worry about melting the paint as much. You're not going to have to worry about it kicking back as much. And like I said, it takes a little bit longer. You're going to go through a couple of cutoff wheels, but in the end, it's a lot easier to use. It's a lot safer for your hood and for yourself. Now, when you use the angle grinder, which is, a lot of guys use the angle grinder, they don't have any issues, but I've also seen a lot of guys that have had issues where the angle grinder will catch, it'll kick back, and it'll jack up the hood bad. So you can use the angle grinder if that's what you prefer. Personally, I'd like to go the Dremel route, but ultimately, choice is yours. I'd use the Dremel. Now also with the Dremel, you can use the sanding wheels. And now that works really well for cleaning up the edges after you cut. So after we do cut it, we're going to want to clean up the burrs, clean up the edges, make it nice and smooth. And then we're going to want to seal it. So any type of clear coat or sealant that you like to use, it's up to you. We want to prevent any oxidation or any rust from forming, so definitely want to seal that up when we're done cutting. And one more thing to mention, when we do cut, we're going to want to cut along the inside edge of our template, just to give us a little bit of room. If we do make a mistake, or when we do clean it up, we want to grind a little extra away, we have the option. So it's always easier to cut it a little bit more and grind it out a little bit more than to, obviously we can't add metal if we mess up on the cut and cut it too big. So definitely go on the side of caution, cut it a little bit smaller, play it safe. So there you have it. It's not too bad. This is gonna kind of give you an idea of what it's gonna look like when it's installed. So sit back, have a beer, and get ready to cut 2 huge holes in your hood. All right, so I went ahead and I removed the 4 screws that attach this piece here. Now that's just using a small Torx bit. I believe it's a T10. So after we remove those, there are some tabs right here, right here, so on. Now those tabs have little pieces of 3M tape that are connecting it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at one end, we're going to pry up, and it's literally gonna pop right off really easily. Just go ahead and work your way down, pop it off, and we're gonna discard this piece, and this is the piece that we're going to be working with. Now you can see right here the little pieces of 3M. Now to remove these, you can just get your thumb and gently roll them down. So pretty much like so. Roll them off, they come off real easy, and then whatever residual adhesive is on there, you can use some goof off or rubbing alcohol to get the rest of that off. So we're gonna go ahead and remove all those. We're gonna clean it all up and get it prepped for 3M tape. All right, so the prep work's coming along nicely. I just used a little small brush here to apply the adhesion promoter. Now what I've done is I've done 2 coats on both of the vents here. You do 1 coat, let it dry, and then add 1 more coat. And I actually used the template I made here to mark the upper and lower sections to know exactly where I need to put the primer and essentially where the tape's going to get laid down. So we're going to start taking our tape, lay down some nice long strips, and we're going to let it overhang. So whatever's overhanging, we're going to take our knife, razor blade, X-Acto knife, whatever you have that's sharp, and we'll trim the outside edge all the way around. So essentially you're going to be starting from the center and building your way out until we fill the entire section that we've painted with the primer. So we'll go ahead and start laying that tape down, and then we'll go from there. Guys, so we got all the 3M tape on there. Turned out really nicely. So you notice we got the tape going all the way around, everywhere where we put the adhesion promoter. So, like I said, once you lay it on, you're going to use your razor blade, X-Acto knife, or whatever you have to trim around the edges and get a nice clean cut. So if we flip it over, everything's really nice and clean. Can't see anything. Turned out really well. So next step is going to be cutting holes in the hood, and then we'll be prepping that and getting that ready for the installation of the vents. And then
How's it going, guys? So we just started the prep work on the hood itself. You can see here we've got masking tape on the lower section here and masking tape on the lower section here. If we pop the hood down, we can see we've masked off a pretty large section here. This is going to be the general area of where we're going to put the vents. If we look on this side, I've actually got one of the vents marked up. Now, what I did to get this is first made a box of the general area of where I want it to be. You can see this outside line here. So how I got that line was I measured up into this ribbing here. So I use a key point wherever you like. You know, everyone's hood's going to be different. For us, we wanted to use the single pane section. We wanted to avoid the ribbing if possible. So measured key points here, made my box of the general area of where I want it to be. I also use this outside line of the hood as a reference point as well. So you can see that coincides here to the tape. Now, one thing to mention is when you're making your initial piece of tape that you're laying down, try to use the outside line as a guide. Don't tape everything all at once, because this line is going to play a huge role in helping you get the right placement. If you do cover it with the tape, it can kind of muddle the line down and it's hard to see exactly where the line is. So it's easier just to kind of use the tape as a guide so you can really see the line of the hood itself, and then afterwards we can go and we can tape it up more and protect it when we get ready to cut. So if I come over here and grab the template and the vent itself, so I made my initial box. And another thing to note is there was some damage on this hood in particular. There was a scratch in this area here, and there was some damage with some filler. So we wanted to try to get rid of that if we could. So I tried to get as much of the vent on those damaged areas as I could. So first thing we did was we lined the vent up, positioned it around, got it where we wanted it, follows the line of the hood, and I went ahead and I took a pencil first and marked the outside line of the vent. I went in with a paint pen so I can see it clearly. I marked that line around the outside, and then I took our template that we made yesterday, placed that template inside of that mark I made. And if we look at the vent here, I measured the tape, measured the distance of the tape on the top and the bottom to give me an idea of where I needed to be with the template. So got the template on there, measured, traced it with a pencil, then went back with a red paint pen so I can see between the two marks. And now we have our actual hole that we're going to be cutting. So it's really nice to use different colors if you can. That way you know you don't want to mistake one for the other, cut the wrong hole. And like I was saying earlier, we want to make sure that we don't cut this inner hole too big. We cut it too big, we're out of luck. Can't add metal, right? So we're going to cut this hole We're going to cut it a little bit smaller on the inside of that line, and that'll give us some room for grinding and cleaning it up. So now that we have the passenger side pretty much ready to go, we're going to transfer all of this over to the other side. So we'll take some measurements. I'm going to find that inside that outer box, and I'll take some key measurements from certain points of the car to figure out, you know, exactly how the other vent needs to be to match the other side. We'll go ahead and get that marked up, and then we'll be ready to cut. All right, guys, so we've got the other template transferred to the other side. It's looking really well. Everything matches up perfect. We've measured, and it's dead on. You can see we've got the rest of the hood masked off. We've got a protective blanket on the windshield and also a protective blanket inside the engine bay. Now that's to prevent sparks from going where they're not supposed to. One thing that I like to do is to prop the hood up just slightly when we're cutting. What that will do is give us a little bit of a barrier between the blanket and when we're actually making the cut, just to make sure that we're not cutting into the blanket. If you notice too, the reason why we put the painter's tape on the bottom as well as the top, now that's to prevent paint chipping or to reduce paint chipping. When we are making these cuts, we're going to get slight paint chipping, we're going to get paint melting. So what the tape's going to do is kind of create a little protective barrier to help reduce the chances that it's going to chip as badly. So definitely I'd recommend, if you can get to it, if it's a single pane, put tape on there if you can. It's going to make it look a lot better when we're done. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out cutting this first hole here. We're going to get that hole cut out, and then we'll go from there onto the next hole. And before we start cutting, make sure, if you have them, wear safety glasses, please. Protect your eyes. If you have a respirator, wear a respirator. You don't want to be breathing in metal dust. So just, you know, be safe if you can. So we're going to go ahead and get this cut out, and we'll move on to the next one. Alright, so we just got both of the holes cut out. It turned out really nice. The lines came out nice and straight. It's one reason why I like using the Dremel. You can get these real nice, tight, precise lines in here, get to the corners fairly easily. So right now that we got them both out, I'm in the process of sanding the edges. We want to clean those up, get all those sharp burrs off. Right now I've got a 80 grit wheel attachment on my Dremel, and then I'll step it up to a 120, and I also have another small attachment. I'll be able to get into these really tight corners here to clean those up. So after we get these cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and take off the masking tape. We're going to clean the area really well. We'll go ahead and we're going to mask around our vent itself to know where we're going to put our contact promoter. We're going to get that put on and then get ready for our final placement and get these vents on this M3. Just doing 2 coats of clear all the way around the exposed metal where I cut. Now it's just to stop any oxidation or rust from forming in the future. So the next step is going to be to let this dry. We're going to pop the vents on there temporarily. We're going to get some masking tape just so we know exactly where we're going to lay down our adhesion promoter. So once we're done with that, we can slap the vents on and we'll be good to go. We got the masking tape around to give us an idea of where we had to put our adhesion promoter. So I went ahead and I've done 2 coats of adhesion promoter on there. So that's drying right now. Our next step is going to be to peel the backing on our 3M tape and to stick these bad boys on. We're almost there, so hang tight and we'll get these suckers installed. We're about to install the second one. Now, one thing to really keep in mind is when you do install this, I try to put my fingers in the vents here and I fold it up just to make sure nothing, because it does have a curve to it. We want to fold it up so nothing touches, because once this 3M tape touches this adhesion promoter, it's bonded. So we do not want it touching unless that's exactly where it's going to go. So I'm going to shut up for a second here so I can concentrate and get this sucker put on. Alright, there it is. So, if you'll notice, when I put the masking tape on originally, I left a tiny bit of a gap, and that gap right there is just so we can remove the tape. If it's too close, the tape's going to get stuck underneath. So, I wanted to give ourselves a little bit of leeway here on the edge. So that went on nicely, so we're going to go ahead and put pressure on here for about 30 seconds, and then we can go ahead and start removing our masking tape. So there they are installed. Roush vents on a 2002 BMW M3.
All right, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions. If you plan on doing this yourself, I'd be happy to answer them.